Harper Lane and Dylan Cross weren't just another TikTok couple chasing fame. They were the duo who turned acting insane into their brand and then crossed a line so dark that their obsession with performance ended in the brutal murder of an unsuspecting collaborator. In the spring of 2022, a new pair of creators suddenly started appearing on TikTok's For You page. Their usernames didn't stand out at first, but their content did. Harper Lane and Dylan Cross were not just another young couple posting dances or lip-sync videos. They branded themselves as the Insane Duo, and their videos were unlike anything most viewers had ever seen. They staged chaotic scenes, smashed random objects in their apartment, and posted clips of themselves staring into the camera for uncomfortable lengths of time with eerie background music. Their act was disturbing, but it was entertaining enough to spark curiosity. Within weeks, their followers skyrocketed into the hundreds of thousands. What made them stand out wasn't just the shock value, but the way they blurred the line between acting and reality. In one video, Harper covered her face in white paint, drew wide black circles around her eyes, and sat rocking in a chair, whispering nonsense words as Dylan filmed in silence. In another, Dylan pretended to eat raw meat straight from the package, while Harper laughed hysterically in the background. Some people thought it was performance art. Others believed it was a cry for help. But everyone agreed that it was different. They were not just dancing for attention. They were building a reputation around madness itself. The couple quickly realized that the internet rewarded extremes. The stranger and more unsettling their content became, the more people shared it. Their fans left comments calling them geniuses, disturbingly creative, and the Bonnie and Clyde of TikTok. Others accused them of faking mental illness for clout, but even negative attention fueled their growth. Harper, who had always craved the spotlight, fed on this controversy. Dylan, quieter and less ambitious before he met her, followed her lead and allowed her ambition to shape their shared online identity. They also knew how to manipulate algorithms. They uploaded late at night, when fewer creators were posting, ensuring their videos reached wider audiences. They used trending sounds but layered their own bizarre visuals over them. Instead of joining harmless trends, they twisted them. If there was a dance challenge, Harper would perform it with smeared makeup and torn clothes, while Dylan appeared in the background holding a knife or standing in the shadows. This calculated chaos set them apart from thousands of other couples. Offline, their lives were very different from what they showed. They lived in a small, dimly lit apartment, cluttered with props and half-finished ideas for future videos. The neighbors already saw them as strange because of the loud noises at odd hours and the way Harper often wandered outside barefoot with a camera, filming Dylan smashing bottles in the street. Yet no one ever imagined that their disturbing content was more than an act. To outsiders, it was easy to dismiss them as performers who thrived on shock value. But beneath the surface, something darker was forming. The attention gave Harper and Dylan a rush, like a drug. Each video that went viral made them hungry to go further. They wanted not just to disturb their audience, but to terrify them. What began as an online persona slowly started to infect their real personalities. The characters they played, two unstable young lovers who didn't care about rules or consequences, were no longer confined to the screen. For Harper especially, the line between acting insane and truly becoming it was already beginning to fade. As Harper and Dylan's following grew, their videos began to shift from strange skits to something far more sinister. In the early months, people could laugh off their antics as edgy performance art, but by summer of 2022, their content had taken a darker tone. Harper was the driving force. She had always been fascinated by horror and true crime, often staying up late to watch documentaries and reading case files online. She told Dylan that if they wanted to stay relevant, They had to stop looking like they were only pretending. To her, their act needed to evolve into something that felt dangerous, something that unsettled viewers long after the video ended. Dylan, reluctant at first, soon gave in. He was deeply attached to Harper, and he believed that following her vision was the only way to keep her attention and their partnership alive. The couple began filming in abandoned buildings they found around town. They would sneak into empty schools, closed-down motels, and forgotten houses on the edge of the suburbs. In these places, Harper would scream into the darkness while Dylan filmed, his camera shaking and his breathing heavy, as though they were being chased. They filled their captions with cryptic phrases. "She told me to do it. I can't stop the voices. This isn't a joke anymore." Fans flooded the comments, some laughing nervously, others insisting the couple had gone too far. The more people speculated, the more Harper leaned into it. She loved being the center of an argument that blurred reality with performance. Offline, their obsession deepened. Harper started keeping notebooks filled with disturbing sketches and ideas for future content. Pages were covered with scrawled phrases about death, insanity, and fame. Dylan found her notes unsettling, but Harper insisted they were just part of the creative process. Still, he noticed changes in her behavior. She slept less, spoke more erratically, and became fixated on how their videos could outdo every other creator in their niche. For Harper, it wasn't enough to act insane. She wanted to prove that their madness was real. Their followers noticed the difference. While other TikTok couples posted cheerful content about relationships and fun challenges, Harper and Dylan's page felt more like a descent into chaos. In one particularly controversial video, Dylan appeared covered in fake blood, stumbling through the apartment as Harper filmed, screaming at him to confess. The performance seemed too convincing. Viewers questioned whether it was staged, sparking rumors that Dylan was in danger. The couple never addressed the comments directly, which only added to the unease. Behind closed doors, Harper pushed Dylan into darker territory. She began researching infamous killers, studying how they planned and carried out their crimes. She spoke about them as though they were artists who created something unforgettable, and she wanted to follow in their footsteps. Dylan, overwhelmed but desperate not to lose her, listened and encouraged her ideas. Slowly, their relationship became less about love and more about obsession. Obsession with fear, obsession with control, and obsession with how far they could push their image. By the end of summer, their videos had stopped being performances entirely. They were rehearsals for something Harper was planning, though Dylan could not fully see it yet. The madness they projected online was no longer just a persona to entertain strangers. It was seeping into every corner of their lives, twisting their minds until the performance and reality became one. What started as an act was now turning into something real and dangerous. On the night of October 14, 2022, the line between performance and reality was shattered. For weeks, Harper had been talking about taking their videos to the next level, something that would silence doubters who claimed they were just faking insanity for clout. Dylan brushed it off at first, assuming it was just another one of her dramatic phases. But Harper's persistence wore him down. She spoke about it like it was destiny, a defining moment that would immortalize them beyond TikTok. When she reached out to a fellow creator named Maya Ellis, Dylan barely questioned her intentions. Maya was a cheerful dancer with a growing following, eager to collaborate with anyone who could help boost her profile. To her, working with Harper and Dylan seemed like a great opportunity. To Harper, Maya was the perfect pawn in a far darker plan. That evening, Maya arrived at their apartment with her usual bubbly energy, carrying a small bag with outfits and props for filming. She thought they were going to record a creepy skit, nothing more. Harper greeted her with a smile that masked her true intentions, while Dylan's nervous silence filled the room with unease. They told Maya the concept was an abduction scene, something edgy that would grab attention. And she agreed without hesitation. After all, their reputation was built on unsettling content. What Maya didn't know was that this would not be just another video staged for shock value. The performance began in the dimly lit living room, cluttered with fake props that looked far too real. Harper positioned the camera and told Maya to act frightened as Dylan tied her wrists with duct tape. At first, Maya laughed nervously, playing along. But as the restraints tightened and Dylan's expression grew colder, her laughter faded. She began to question whether this was really part of the act. Harper, holding the camera steady, urged Dylan on with nods, her eyes shining with a disturbing intensity. To her, this was no longer content for TikTok. This was art. Proof that their insanity was not an act. Maya's confusion turned to fear as she struggled against the restraints. She asked them to stop, insisting the footage would be convincing enough. But her pleas were ignored. Dylan hesitated, his hands shaking, but Harper whispered instructions, pushing him further. The room echoed with sounds of a struggle that grew louder, more violent, until there was no mistaking the shift. The performance had crossed into reality. When it was over, the silence was deafening. Harper's breathing was heavy, but her expression was disturbingly calm, almost satisfied. Dylan looked shattered, unable to fully process what they had done. Instead of calling for help or undoing what had happened, Harper insisted they record the aftermath. She framed the camera toward the motionless figure on the floor, treating it like a scene out of the crime documentaries she idolized. To her, this was their masterpiece, the culmination of months of blurring the line between fiction and truth. Dylan, numb and terrified, obeyed her demands, though the weight of what they had done was already pressing down on him. The video was never shared publicly. Harper stored it on a hard drive, convinced that one day it would be seen and remembered as their ultimate creation. Maya's body, however, posed a problem that could not be edited away. Harper viewed it as another challenge to solve, while Dylan could barely stand to look at it. That night marked the point of no return. What began as a TikTok skit ended as a brutal murder, and the couple who once thrived on pretending to be insane had finally proven that the madness they flaunted was terrifyingly real. When Maya failed to return home on October 14th, her family knew something was wrong immediately. She was not the type to disappear without contact. Her phone went silent, her social media posts stopped, and her friends hadn't heard from her. Within 24 hours, a missing person report was filed. Investigators began piecing together her last known movements, combing through messages and calls. What they discovered was chillingly clear. The last people she had communicated with were Harper Lane and Dylan Cross. The TikTok couple claimed to be collaborating with her, and the text evidence confirmed it. That was enough for detectives to knock on their door. Harper and Dylan greeted officers with wide eyes and calm expressions. They said Maya had come over to film a video, but left later in the evening. Harper even added that Maya seemed distracted, as though she had somewhere else to be. Their performance was convincing, almost rehearsed, and without immediate proof, police had little reason to hold them. Still, suspicions lingered. Detectives began to dig deeper, pulling security camera footage from the surrounding streets. That was when they noticed something troubling. Maya was seen entering the apartment building, but there was no footage of her leaving. Neighbors were questioned next. Several reported hearing strange noises that night, muffled screams, loud banging, and at least one voice begging. A neighbor directly below Harper and Dylan's apartment recalled the ceiling shaking violently, as though furniture was being knocked over. Yet none of them had thought to call the police at the time, assuming the couple was filming another one of their bizarre TikToks. This detail troubled investigators deeply. What the online world found entertaining had possibly allowed something horrific to unfold without interference. Forensic teams secured a warrant to search the apartment. At first glance, it looked like a messy home cluttered with props. Fake knives, bottles of stage blood, and costumes were scattered everywhere, making it difficult to distinguish between performance materials and potential evidence. But when investigators examined the walls closely, they discovered faint stains beneath a fresh layer of white paint. Testing revealed traces of human blood. In the bathroom, more evidence surfaced: a towel with dried stains hastily stuffed behind the sink, and a knife missing from the kitchen set. The signs were undeniable. Something violent had occurred in that apartment. The most damning discovery came from their electronic devices. Harper and Dylan had always filmed obsessively, documenting nearly every strange act for potential content. When detectives sifted through their hard drives, they found dozens of unsettling videos never uploaded online. Some showed Harper pacing the room in smeared makeup, muttering about voices. Others showed Dylan tied up, screaming, while Harper laughed behind the camera. But buried among the files was one video unlike the rest. It was the footage of Maya's final moments. Though heavily staged at first, the recording captured the exact moment the performance turned into real violence. Investigators had been prepared for disturbing evidence, but the raw brutality of the video left them shaken. Harper and Dylan were brought in again, and this time their calm performance began to crack. Dylan broke down quickly, his demeanor collapsing under pressure. Harper, however, remained unnervingly composed, insisting the footage was misunderstood, that it was just part of the act. Detectives knew then that they were dealing with something more dangerous than two young creators seeking attention. They were facing individuals who had let their obsession with fame consume them to the point of murder, and there was no more pretending their insanity was harmless. When the case finally went to trial, the courtroom was packed with journalists, grieving family members, and curious onlookers who had followed every update online. The story of Harper Lane and Dylan Cross was no longer just a shocking headline. It had become a cultural obsession. Clips of their old TikTok videos circulated endlessly, dissected by true crime channels, reaction creators, and armchair detectives who tried to piece together when the couple had crossed the line from performance to reality. The footage recovered from their hard drive had been sealed from public release due to its disturbing nature, but its existence alone was enough to ensure that the trial would be one of the most sensational of the year. From the beginning, Harper and Dylan's defense centered on one claim: insanity. Their lawyers argued that the couple had lived so deeply inside their fabricated personas that they no longer understood the difference between real life and performance. To support this, they showed clips of Harper in smeared makeup, speaking incoherently, and Dylan stumbling through scenes of chaos. The defense painted a picture of two young people who had become victims of their own obsession with online fame, spiraling into mental collapse. Harper herself leaned into this narrative, sitting in court with a blank expression, sometimes smiling strangely as if amused by the proceedings. But the prosecution dismantled this claim piece by piece. They presented evidence that proved careful planning rather than madness. They highlighted the fact that Harper had invited Maya under the pretense of collaboration, that duct tape and other items were purchased days beforehand, and that the walls of the apartment had been deliberately repainted to cover blood evidence. These were not the acts of individuals unable to distinguish reality from fantasy, prosecutors argued, but calculated decisions made to hide a crime. The video of Maya's final moments, though only shown in private sessions with the jury, was described in court as proof of intent. The jury learned how Harper encouraged Dylan throughout, how she framed the camera to capture everything, and how neither of them made any effort to help their victim. As the trial stretched on, Dylan began to crumble under the weight of it all. Witnesses reported that he often avoided eye contact and seemed consumed by guilt. Harper, by contrast, appeared calm and even defiant. Some days she smirked as evidence was presented, as though she relished the attention. Other times she sat motionless, giving nothing away. This stark contrast between them became another point of fascination for the public, fueling endless debates about who had been the true mastermind and who had simply followed. When the verdict finally came, the courtroom was silent. Both Harper Lane and Dylan Cross were found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury rejected the insanity defense, agreeing with prosecutors that their behavior had been deliberate, controlled, and devastatingly cruel. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Maya's family, it was a measure of justice, though it could never bring back the daughter, sister, and friend they had lost. After the trial, the couple's TikTok account was permanently frozen, but clips of their eerie videos continued to circulate. People debated whether there had been warning signs all along, whether viewers had ignored red flags because they were entertained, and whether social media itself had enabled the tragedy. To this day, their story stands as a chilling reminder of how quickly the pursuit of fame can twist into something monstrous, and how a performance meant to shock the world ended in a crime that truly did.